Bridge. This is the show where we bridge you from Sunday to Sunday and bridge God's word from our heads to our hearts as we learn to take in Pastor Danny's message and apply it in our real lives. This past Sunday was a special Sunday, special for me. It was my ordination as an elder at the Church of Covenant Park, and Pastor Danny gave a special message on answering God's call. And I think that's an important topic that you need to think about and you need to work through. How do I hear God's voice? How do I hear when God is calling me? And what is he calling me to do? Or what is he trying to say to me? And I think that's something that we're going to explore tonight in a special way. I'd like to read a couple passages as we start, just to set the tone. And one is from the Old Testament, from the book of Isaiah. And in Isaiah 6:8 said, "And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, 'Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?' Then I said, 'Here I am, send me.'" That's an awesome response. When God says, "Hey, who shall I send? Here, pick me, pick me." You know, think about when you're on the playground and you're trying to pick teams for a sport or whatever. Nobody wants to get picked last, but how cool is it when the creator of the universe is calling you to do something? I think that's really cool. Pick me is an awesome response. And another one, if you look at the life of Jesus, I'll go to Mark chapter 1, verses 17 and 18. "And Jesus said to them, 'Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men.' And immediately they left their nets and they followed him." That's that's the response. Immediately, let's go. When God says go, when Jesus says go, let's go. And someone that I know is all into let's go when God says let's go is Jason Scott. So Jason Scott, welcome to the Bridge. Welcome back to the Bridge. You've been on a couple of times.
Thanks.
Why don't you reintroduce yourself to our YouTube fam and tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yep, so my name is Jason Scott. I'm from here in Howard County. I'm the area director for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, FCA, here in Howard County. My wife, Emily, is watching. Hi! My daughter, Josie, and we are getting ready to have our second baby in June.
Wonderful.
Yes.
That is really awesome. So what is your favorite thing about FCA? So people who aren't familiar with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, what's so special about FCA?
The ministry of FCA is, when I heard that it's an open door ministry. What that means to me is that we're able to go into the school, we're able to take the ministry into places that otherwise maybe the church might not be able to get into, specifically in the sports world. So using the platform of sports to minister to coaches and athletes, that's what drew me to FCA, was utilizing the platform of sport.
Nice. Yeah. And it's interesting when you said that, because I usually think of FCA as ministering to the athletes,
yes, making
the connection there, but you said ministering to the coaches and the athletes.
Yes.
So what kind of relationships have you built with some of the coaches in the area through your ministry work?
So building relationships with coaches is a little bit different than building relationships with athletes. Coaches are adults, coaches are stretched, coaches are trying to do a lot of different things in the community with their teams. So that really takes a different approach. Breakfasts, you can always get a coach to go to breakfast or serving. They always eat. They will always eat. So breakfasts or lunches, and then ministering to coaches really where they are. If that's, difficulties in a marriage or trying to work through relationships with their kids. When I say their kids, I don't mean like their biological kids. I mean like their athletes.
Nice.
So, and ministering to them in those types of ways. Yeah. The other way is just coming alongside and being very much an encourager and a helper. Like, Coach, like, what do you need, man? Yep. And anticipating some of those needs that might come up.
Yeah, that's cool. I always think of the show Friday Night Lights. Did you watch?
I have not seen it, but I know, yes, but it is a big deal.
That's fantastic when you can see the influence that a coach can have on his team and on the members of the community through that team. And it's set in Texas where everybody's like all into football and stuff. But about halfway through the series, the coach actually gets removed from his one school and gets sent across town to a school where the football program is not as broadly developed. And you have some students who had some trouble with the law or other issues in the past. But to see him kind of building into the lives of those students, I think it's a great opportunity as you're reaching the coaches and reaching the students to kind of set an example, to live life by example, and kind of show that good example to the next generation of student athletes, how to be a good sport, how to be a good person in general, and hopefully to spark that interest in faith as well by saying, hey, Jason doesn't get all weird and upset when he loses a game or whatever, or how does that work, as you see that? So I thought it was interesting. If you haven't seen Friday Night Lights, I recommend it.
Definitely.
It's a fun show.
Yeah.
I think it's still on Netflix, and you can go back and binge watch it. It's a good one.
But that's true, and what you said is really important, and I don't even know if you understand what you said, but so a coach has to deal with a kid that's having trouble with the law. Mm-hmm. That has nothing to do with X's and O's. That has nothing to do with routes and defensive schemes and practice planning. It has nothing to do with that kind of thing. So if you can step into that arena with a coach, that's a big deal. Yeah.
I liked the coach in that show because he had kind of a catchphrase or a slogan, and it was clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. That clear eyes, can I see clearly?
Sure.
Is my heart full? Am I in this?
Yes.
For real? Am I dedicated to it? Mm-hmm. And that notion can't lose. Hey, if we work together as a team and we set our mind to it, set our heart to it, and we strive after it, can't lose. I love that kind of that focus, and I think that can apply in the kingdom work that we do in ministry as well. If we keep our eyes focused on Jesus, if we keep our hearts full of His Spirit, if we keep our minds dedicated to His Word, and if we try to put in practice, like I said, everything in the bridge is always about how do we put it into practice and make it real. We can't lose because we got the God of the universe on our side too, which is pretty awesome when you think about the mission that we're carrying out here. So
absolutely,
yeah. So
absolutely,
that's cool. So Pastor Dan's message all about answering God's call. So you've talked about. We were talking a little bit before we went on the air about the call. So God has called you. The full-time ministry is your thing with FCA, right?
Yes.
You don't have a second job. You're not doing other things. That's your thing. How did you know that God was calling you into full-time ministry in general, and then maybe specifically with FCA? So
it kind of starts with a story. When I was in 2009, I started coaching. I started my coaching career. I was in college. Through that point, I played college baseball and football. And then I started my coaching career, and I was living in Lexington, Kentucky at the time. While I was there, that's where I met the Lord. That's where I came into a relationship with Jesus.
So you did not grow up in the church?
No.
You didn't know. So how did that even start? How did you first get exposed to Jesus?
One thing that happens with sports is there's a lot of time on the road. You're on buses, you're on, depending on the level, you're on buses, you're on planes, you're in vans, there's a lot of travel, and then there's a lot of downtime when you're on the road. There was a book that I kept in my bag that was a world religions book that I was asking philosophical and religious questions just like anybody else, I think. And the time on the road afforded me the ability to dig into a book and read. So that's kind of how it presented itself. When I was at Transylvania, and after I had met Christ, I realized that there were a lot of things that the guys that I was coaching were struggling with, that I had struggled with not 2 or 3 years before that.
Gotcha.
So I was about 25, 26 when I started my coaching career. And they were struggling with the same things that I had been struggling with. Relationships, parents, and then some of it was they were dealing with some adult things. I can remember one of our pitchers was, I think, a junior or senior in high school, or a junior or senior in college, and his wife was pregnant for the second time.
Wow.
Right. So, guys, we're going out to hang out. No, he's going home because he's got responsibilities and things that he's got to take care of. So, it was really walking with a lot of guys through that period in their life. And then there's a little bit more there. Even before that, that's where while I was still in college, God started to really get my attention through some difficult things. And so I think that definitely played a part into me answering the call once I got there and was like, okay, now I think I have something to talk to these guys about.
Yeah, that's cool. So a lot of times God will work in the kind of circumstances of our lives and the experiences that we've had. And it sounded like what I heard too was something about shared experiences as well. I think that's one of the things that Pastor Dan said that really struck his life and gave him opportunities was when he had a common interest.
Yeah.
And he talked about this football coach that he met just per chance over in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Met this guy and was chatting with him, and then he said, "Hey, do you want to check out my office?" And
Sure.
Pastor Dan was like, "Well, it depends on what your office is. Like, you work at the university. What do you do?"
Yeah, yeah.
And then he found out he's a football coach. He's like, "I'm in."
Yeah.
You know, and that was the way that God opened the door for Pastor Dan to be the chaplain of the University of Pittsburgh football team.
Yeah.
He was able to do that because there was a common interest. So it sounds like in your life, the common interest was also a catalyst to help you find that ultimate calling that God had for you.
Yeah, and it actually was. It was. And there was some, I don't want to sugarcoat it. It was actually through a lot of some trial and difficulty. Again, away from the field. Just because athletes play sports doesn't mean that they don't deal with things, heavy things, away from the field.
Sure.
So when I looked at a ministry that provided me the opportunity to walk with players and coaches and families on the field, but then off the field as well,
Yep.
that's where I was like, all right, I'm in.
Yeah.
If that's what it means, then I'm in.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's cool. You have that common interest in sports,
Yes.
which builds the relationship. You know, that's the initial, you have the opportunity to coach these kids and help them grow as athletes, but then you also have the opportunity to mentor them, disciple them, work with them off the field
Yeah.
when they're going through the difficult, the struggles of life that we all have.
That's right.
Really, when it comes down to.
That's right.
And that's a great opportunity that God did. Pastor Dan pointed out, he's like, yep, Jason doing the discipling thing of passing on his life lessons to those that were dealing with a similar lesson as well. So
Yes.
that's really cool. And that's good. I will take this moment to pause and say hi to our EFAM on YouTube. We're always glad that you join us on the bridge. If you have any thoughts or questions, how do you hear God's calling in your life? Or you're struggling to find God's calling, and how would you go about doing that? Feel free to drop it in the chat or leave us a comment afterwards as well. But we love to hear from you. We love to interact on the bridge as well. So if you're on now, please feel free to chat in, and we'll get to those questions as well as we're going through. Pastor Dan mentioned lots of ways that we can hear God's call. And one of the ones he said the most common way for people to hear God's call is through other people. And the example he pointed out was, the disciples are walking by, and then Jesus walks by, and John the Baptist says, "Oh, behold, it's the Son of God. There he is, right there." And everybody else was kind of like, "Whoa, drop everything and go." But that point there, so John gave them a nudge, and then Simon Peter and Andrew went.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of cool. Have you had any experiences like that? Who are some of the people in your life that helped you either find Christ or find that calling?
That's a good question. There were, I'll give you some very pivotal people. They were Noah Post and Linda Post.
Okay.
And Courtney Post and Marty Weisler.
Cool.
So Marty was my roommate. Courtney is his wife. Noah was Courtney's younger brother.
Oh, cool.
Very, very, very influential in me actually walking this out with FCA and full-time ministry and everything. My buddy DJ, Daryl, DJ Disbro, he gave me a Bible before I had moved to Kentucky.
Okay.
So I had graduated, come back home. Before I left to go back out there to continue my, coaching career, DJ had given me a Bible.
Oh, wow.
It was a Gold Gideon's Bible.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I still have it.
Nice.
It's packed away. It's fallen apart,
Nice.
but I still have it.
That's awesome.
Joe Lake. Joey was I went to high school with him and played baseball with him, played football with him. And then Joe made a suggestion after I'd been working for a company called the Baseball Factory. He made a suggestion to look up this baseball team out of Virginia called the Herndon Braves.
Okay.
The Herndon Braves is a collegiate summer FCA team.
Oh, nice.
So that was how I was introduced to FCA.
Nice.
And it was really people kind of living their lives and me watching them live their lives that made a huge impact on me. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear and to see that those, and I love how you remember the names too. And this one gave me a Bible.
Yeah.
And I had time to read it.
Yes.
And these introduced me to an FCA team. It's like God is putting the pieces together and kind of leading you one step at a time. And I think I was going to say God's famous for that kind of one step as we follow him and trust him. Take one step of faith, then take the next step. And sometimes you won't be able to see 10 steps ahead, but God will give you enough to take the next step and the next step. And I was thinking back on Sunday just on my walk as well. And really everything started faith-wise for me when my buddy Gerald in college gave me a Bible and invited me to come to the college fellowship group.
Yeah.
And way back when I was preaching about the talents, I actually talked about how Gerald, I still have that card and I still have that Bible because that was a significant thing that God used to kind of open my eyes and my heart to Jesus. All the things that I learned about in the Catholic Church growing up that weren't real to me, it didn't click until that point in college where everything was like, oh my gosh, God is real. And this actually makes sense.
Yes.
And the Bible, when I'm looking at it, was almost a mirror describing things I was struggling with, challenges that I was going through.
Yep.
And kind of the answer to all of those challenges was right there. And it was like, wow, I had heard about this my whole life, and it didn't make sense until then. And then there were other folks along the way. There was a guy named Jason, a different Jason Lee, who came to me and said, hey, you have some questions about this faith stuff, and what's the difference between Catholicism and Protestant? Well, how does this all work? We're going to meet, and we're going to address those. I'm like, all right. He sought me out and took the initiative to do that, and I'm so glad he did. And then there was an elder at the church back home named Gordon, who worked with the college ministry, and he challenged me to grow in my faith. He set such a good example, and there was a point where our church back home lost its pastor. So Gordon's like, well, I got to step up and preach now. So you're going to step up and teach Sunday school because, and Gordon had been the Sunday school teacher for all that time. And he's like, and to boot, you're going to teach through the book of Deuteronomy. I was like, dude, what? Like, what is that book? And that's a tough one, And then fast forward all these years, working through ministry or through ministry work in college and then moving down here to Maryland. In 2018, I had open heart surgery, and Pastor Matt was in the hospital room with me one night, just staying there to keep me company through the night. And he said, hey, have you ever thought about full-time ministry? And I was like, what now? like now of all time, that's when you're going to ask this question. But it was like God had used one piece to the next piece to the next piece. And at that point, I was like, the timing wasn't right for me to answer that question, but Matt planted that seed. And then God used that seed to grow and challenge me. And here we are now. I'm a seminary student, preparing to go into full-time ministry and trying to hear and understand what is the next step for me in God's journey that he has for my life. So it's so cool, kind of when you put it all together and kind of see that working. So, and I'm so thankful when Pastor Danny said to think about the individuals. I was like, I just want to say thank you to those. If you guys are watching tonight, thank you, all of you, who have invested in me or set that example for me. And I hope that I too, and I know you, Jason, are an example for so many students, athletes, coaches, friends, brothers and sisters here at church. You and Emily both are a wonderful example to us of those who are faithful and willing to put yourself out there and trust that God's kingdom will provide for literally the food on your table, the clothes on your back, and everything else. God is doing it as you're faithful in following that call.
Yeah.
So, do you ever get to the point where you doubt or struggle with, hey, was I really called? Am I really following? Like, do you ever get to that point?
If I can, for 1 second, I'm going to give some shout outs.
Okay, go for
I need to give some shout
outs.
Gary Coiro, thank you very much.
Nice.
Deb and Warren were pivotal in my pivotal for me.
Nice.
Edwin Solomon
and
his son Matt Solomon, pivotal. I mean, I really don't, just pivotal. To say like, I don't know where I would be, like that's cliche, but it's very true.
Wow.
So if you guys are watching, I love you. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
What was your question?
So the question was, so you received that call from God and
Yes.
you followed faithfully. Are there ever points along the path where you're like, hey, did I really hear from God? Am I really going the right way? Or have there been times where you face doubts or other confusion, frustration, et cetera, as you answered that call?
I know other people. I know that there are people that experience that. I would say that I've experienced a lot of difficulty. Not doubt.
Cool.
Just difficulty. And that's just for me. Sorry, Ace. That's just for me personally. I'm not saying that is not what other people experience at all. Some people 100% do. I will tell you that what I experienced were some difficulty. trying to have meetings, trying to come up with a schedule, trying to work my way through training, trying to manage training and relationships, trying to build, trying to really come on board well and come on staff and learn everything that I needed to learn. So that was the difficulty that I experienced. And it still goes on today, but what I will say is that I wouldn't change the difficulty. I never doubted that this is where I was supposed to be, because I never doubted, really, because I knew that I knew the impact that could be had if I would just be obedient. I just knew that I love Jesus, I love sports. I don't see a lot of other people around here like making that, or kind of taking that model or that ministry and like really running at it 100%. I just don't see, I have not seen that in this area specifically. I knew that, wait a minute, man, like, I love God, I love Christ, and I love sports, I love athletes, and I can do this.
Nice.
Well, then I can do this. But that doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
Nice.
So it wasn't that I experienced doubt, is that I experienced trials working my way up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Trials and adversity.
Trials and adversity.
That's interesting. And I think sometimes when people see that too, they think, well, I think I'm following God, and then it doesn't go, it's not all sunshine and roses. And
Yes.
then you start to meet opposition, and you start to get, and some people might waver. I like what you said, though, about the adversity, that you want to push through that as well.
Yeah.
And one thing that I thought of when you were talking about that was that this is not new, and this is not a surprise. In fact, Paul, the Apostle Paul, was writing to his primary disciple, Timothy, kind of his right-hand man, and also one that he really poured into
Sure.
to train to be a pastor. And he wrote to Timothy and talked about his adversity as well. So in 2 Timothy 3:11, Paul said, "My persecutions and suffering that happened to me at Antioch, at Iconium, and at Lystra, which persecutions I endured, yet from them the Lord rescued me. Indeed, all who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted." So Paul's like, this is not a surprise.
Yeah.
And in fact, in some ways, if you're taking that step of faith, one of the ways to confirm it is that all of a sudden, yeah, it didn't go as easy as I thought it would.
Sure.
And there are actually challenges and opposition, because we talk about the physical reality in the world, but there's a spiritual reality that is there.
Yes.
There's a battle that God talks about. There's
Yes.
a battle in the heavenlies over the things that are going on. And the things we do here make a difference there, and the things that happen there make a difference here. And there's definitely opposition to those who want to answer the call for Christ.
Yeah.
Those who want to, if you want to live a godly life, you will be persecuted. You will face opposition. You will face challenges. It's not a surprise. In some ways, what it should be is a confirmation that
Yes.
you're doing the right thing. But that's not always easy. Some of these adversities aren't like made up, like, oh, just a little test here or there. Sometimes it's like, boom.
Yeah.
And it's a battle that's going on.
Yes.
Have you experienced any of those, like, boom?
Again, honestly, the first few years that I came on staff with FCA, I described them as drowning, as like being completely in over my head, like trying to manage a lot, like way more than I had the ability to manage at that point. And so it was like, that's the way that I would definitely explain it, is it was like I was just completely in over my head. But you learn how to swim. That's kind of what happens, is you get in over your head.
Yep.
You won't sink. God's not going to let you sink, but you're going to learn how to swim. The way I try to explain it in physical terms is, when you are getting stronger, you actually you're hurting a little bit. You're not really comfortable. If you're growing, if you're getting stronger, or if you're healing from a surgery.
Sure, absolutely.
So I had shoulder surgery, and anybody that's had surgery knows that rehab is not fun. But rehab is actually when you're getting better. But if you've gone through rehab and you've actually done the rehab, it's not comfortable.
No, it's hard work.
It's very hard work. It's very hard work, and it's very uncomfortable, and you're actually getting better.
Yeah. I think of even just a workout when you're lifting weights to build muscle.
Yep.
You're tearing the muscle, and then the muscle is
Getting
growing
stronger.
and,
Yep.
and getting stronger and reinforcing.
Mhm.
But that's painful. And sometimes those good workouts, like you don't want to work to injury. I'm not saying like to the point where your muscle literally is torn. But on the microscopic level, you're breaking down the muscle is growing and it's healing. And you have to give it that time, but you have to stress it so it can get stronger. And you have to keep stressing it.
It's good.
And keep pushing it so it gets stronger. And I think there's a spiritual principle at work there too. That God makes sure Jesus was tempted in every way as we are, but without sin.
Yeah.
So he's gone through it as well. He can relate to it.
Yes.
But think of the trials that Jesus went through that strengthened his faith. And I think it's weird to think about that, but Jesus was fully man and fully God. So the notion of Jesus' faith being strengthened by the trials that he went through is a real thing.
Yeah.
When Satan took him out in the wilderness as he started his ministry for 40 days, and Pastor Dan and I talked about that last week, that 40 days, those were serious things that Satan was throwing at our Lord.
Yeah.
When he was asking him, hey, throw yourself down from here. Command these stones to become bread. He was hungry.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff, and Satan was quoting scripture back at Jesus when Jesus was quoting scripture. So it's like, man, he's been through it. So again, we shouldn't be surprised when we go through those challenges.
So it's sports ministry, so I feel very comfortable just using all different types of sports terms and imagery and all that kind of thing. You pick any sport you want. You put two opposing teams on the field with two differing opinions about themselves, with two different philosophies, with two different wills. You're going to get a fight. You put two different tennis players, two different baseball teams, that's competition. And that's where we are. In the spiritual realm, that is actually going on. In the physical realm, that's a picture of what actually is going on in the spiritual realm.
Yep.
So,
cool.
Yeah.
Pastor Dan put in the chat, and I think he says it really well. He said, adversity does not indicate a mistake of direction. It reveals the need to grow in Christ's strength.
Yeah.
And I thought that's a really good way to say it. We need to grow.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised when the adversity comes.
No.
In some ways, God is going to use that to help you to grow.
Exactly.
To be stronger when the adversity comes. And that's true for adversity, that's true for discipline. Because sometimes God has to correct us too.
Yes.
Because we're not following him down the path he wants. And he has to be like, well, I'm your father. And I'm going to make sure, because no father, if a son is loved by his father, he's going to be disciplined by that father. And God said, don't be surprised there either.
Yep.
As he's trying to correct us and help us to find that path. So as you're seeking God's call, where do I go? What do I do? Like I said, don't be surprised if you face adversity.
Right.
Don't be surprised if you face discipline.
Right.
When you screw up. But I think you said it best earlier that God's not going to leave you or forsake you.
No.
He's not going to let you drown. I think is the way you said it. He's not going to let you drown.
Right.
But he might let you sink for a little bit. He might let you flounder for a little bit as you're learning how to swim.
Yeah.
So when you go through. Cool. How did others react? So when you became a Christian, or when you decided to go full time with FCA, how did your parents react, or how did other friends that you'd known for years react to that decision?
When I went on staff with FCA, there was definitely some, I would say fear, or what are you doing? Going on? Are you going to get paid? How are you going to support a family? Are you going to actually do this? And so yes, I experienced a lot of that. With some of with some folks, they really didn't understand. With some people that knew me, that I was an athlete my entire life. I've been in sports my entire life. So that some people saw that, oh, you're going sports ministry? Duh, of course you are. That makes sense. You've been a good guy your life for as long as we've known you, and now you're just going to shift to sports ministry? Yeah, we could have picked that out, totally. But there were some people that kind of fell away, for sure. When I started to really read my Bible, and really I'm reading the Bible to glean wisdom and take stuff out of it so that I can put it back out, so yeah, there were some friendships that ended, some new friendships that started. But I think the biggest thing was I was hungry to go I was hungry to go after Christ and what what he had said, you can go and do this. I was more hungrier to go after that than I was like with friends, with people that were kind of naysayers. Here's the thing though, you start moving in a direction and you go through the difficulty of, I got to figure out how to make this work. I got to figure out how to make this work. When you come out on the other side of that, and you go back to those same people and you can have a conversation, you can explain, you get an opportunity. You are gifted the opportunity to say, this is what I learned through this experience. I learned how to talk to people. I learned how to have different opinions from other people. I learned how to develop relationships. I learned how to, some of the administrative and the business side that I was not familiar with. I learned how to talk to people from differing perspectives. I learned how to look into situations and say, well, this could work and this could work, but that maybe could not work. So the upside is, the way that I would explain it is, you get to see what God actually made you for. Not that when you first came in and you're like, I don't know what to do, I don't know. But you get to be a part of that maturation process. And it's an ongoing thing, but you get to go back and talk to some of those people and say, this is what I learned through that, and am learning through that. So, yeah, it was worth it.
Yeah.
It was worth it.
I like that a lot. This is what I'm learning.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people point out like, oh, well, Jason thinks he knows everything, or Jason thinks he's got it all figured out.
Sure.
And no, we're all learning. And
Right.
This is what I'm learning, and this is what you can learn too.
Right.
It's an opportunity.
Right.
I think sometimes, I don't know how to describe it well, but sometimes people think that some people in the name of Christ will put others down, or think that somehow they're better than.
Yeah.
That's really not what Jesus, that was never his intention.
No.
And he never treated people like that. He always loved people.
Yeah.
And met them where they were.
And met them where
helped
they were.
Through the situations they were going through. And it's cool to say, hey, we're all learning. That's the most honest thing. We're all learning. Nobody has God all figured out.
Sure.
Because it's impossible to have God all figured out.
Yeah.
But we know, and we've experienced the grace of Jesus in our lives. And we know that our lives have changed and will never be the same again. And we want others to experience that same grace, that same calling, that same there. So, and it sounds like, that with common interests and the example that you lead, that's a real, genuine way to kind of make that impact, to make that difference.
Yeah.
Sometimes we preach with words. Sometimes we preach with the way we live our lives. And that genuine caring. Jesus said they'll know that you're mine because you love one another.
Yeah.
And we need to live that life of love. And we need to love our brothers and sisters in Christ. And we need to love those who maybe don't know the Lord. But it has to be genuine. Love needs to be genuine. Faith needs to be genuine.
Yeah.
All of those things. Genuine is key.
Yeah.
I think we need to do that. And same thing when we're seeking after God's call. We need to be genuine and real with him and say, God, I don't understand. Or, hey, can you make that clearer? I think I know what you're saying. Can you confirm? And we can ask those questions. But again, we need to be genuine as we're walking through that. So I think that's really cool. It's cool to hear how you found your calling. Have you had good relationships with some of the students that you minister to who were seeking their calling in life? And how do you help them if they come to you and say, Jason, I don't know what I need to do next, or whatever the situation is? Can you think of one where you were able to kind of help somebody find their course?
Not yet, because I've not been on staff that long with FCA. But I can think of one instance. I was at a church at the end of Centennial Lane, and they had just brought on a new youth pastor and his wife.
Cool.
And I was presenting to that youth ministry, just FCA, that I work for FCA. I'm here in Howard County. This is what it is. This is what we do. These are the schools that we're in. This is kind of my vision for ministry. And there was a little boy. He's probably in 5th or 6th grade. And when I had served at Bridgeway, at the church that I began at, I saw this same kind of temperament in one of the little boys. So this little boy, he's got a question. He's got a question. He's got a hand up again. He's out of his seat. He's circling his seat. He's like sitting down. He's got another question. And so he continues to do this. And then I asked, and I've seen this and I like this. I've asked, okay, will someone pray for us? And he couldn't help himself. Hands shot up.
Uh-huh.
I think that's one of the things that his hand shot up, maybe because he was prepared to pray, but maybe more it's because God just wired him that way. He's just wired to be like, I got a question. I can't sit still. And so we prayed. I've had that happen on a couple different occasions. At Mount View Middle School, for some reason, it was the same little boy, the same 6th grade boy. And the huddle's a small group Bible study. The huddle had about 27, 28 students in it, 6th grade to 8th grade. And at the end of the huddle, someone was always asked, would someone pray? And it'd be crickets. No one.
No one's, yep.
And then this one kid, every time, and he would pray. And it was like, when you see that, that's the kind of thing that you call out.
Nice.
With the kid when I was in that church, and he's running around, his hand shot up because he couldn't help himself. That's what God is looking for. He's going to use that. You may not, his hand shot up and I said, good, you pray. And he was like, I was like, oh, now you got nothing. You got nothing now? You got nothing for us, huh?
Yeah.
He prayed for us.
Nice.
The same thing with the young man at Mount View.
Nice.
And every single time he prayed. That I called that out. There's a young lady named Kendall Wilson that leads a huddle over at Oakland Mills. I met Kendall when she was an 8th grader at Oakland Mills Middle School. She approached me at Grace because she wanted to start a huddle at Oakland Mills Middle School.
Wow.
8th grader.
8th grader said, hey, I want to do something.
I don't even know how old 8th graders are. 12, 13?
Yeah.
So she approached me.
Wow.
When I see that kind of thing, I call it out.
Nice.
One of the great experiences I think that you've had that I've had as well is Matt called it out of me too. Matt has called it out.
Yep.
And that is it's not a small thing. That's a big deal. When people in positions of leadership, they can see that young leaders they're like trying to step up. And you say, I recognize that in you. I recognize it.
Nice.
There's going to be a place for that at some point. Or for, all different types of skills. The way the body is constructed and put together. I recognize that, and so I'm always looking out.
Yep.
Always looking out for the artist and saying, that's something that God has put in you.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. I want to ask this question because I like this one. This is one of my favorite verses, and it's one that I struggled to interpret, and then I think over time I've had different interpretations or different understandings. It's Psalm 37:4, and it says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart."
Absolutely.
So how do you apply that? How do you interpret that verse, and how do you apply that verse? Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart.
Yeah, so I've got another story. So
Cool.
So that is actually a verse that I meditated on before I met my wife. So, Em, if you're watching, I'm going to tell the story.
Nice.
So, I was attending Bridgeway, and I was in my early 30s at that point. I've always known that I wanted to get married. Done the dating, but I was like, I'm done. I want to meet a woman that I can marry. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Delight yourself in the Lord. So I started attending a men's Bible study. First, I was like, okay, I'm going to church. I'm going to the 8 o'clock service. I am going to work in youth ministry, meaning like Sunday school with like the little kids. Not from great motives, though. I wanted to get married. I said to myself, all right, God, I'm going to serve, but surely there is a woman that is eligible, that is also serving in the kids ministry. And there was, and it was Emily, but I didn't meet her yet. I didn't meet her at that time. Timing was wrong. I said, okay, well, there's no one here, but I like serving, so I'm just going to keep serving in kids ministry. I'll tie that back up at the end. I said, okay, I'm going to go to a men's Friday morning Bible study. So I started attending a men's Friday morning Bible study. Surely one of these gentlemen has a wonderful daughter or granddaughter or friend of a friend that they could maybe set me up with. No. Nope. Kind of. That kind of happened. I'll tie that up at the end.
Cool.
But I started attending that men's Friday morning Bible study and continued to attend. I mean, to this day, I go to a 6:30 men's Friday morning Bible study.
Yep.
Like, that was 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. That was 12 years ago.
Wow.
Still 6:30 Friday morning.
Wow.
Okay, so delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. I started, Warren was one of my first I consider Warren as one of the only mentors that I've ever had really in my life. And Warren just kept it really real. Warren attended that men's Friday morning Bible study. Warren's fiance at the time, Deb, who is on my board for FCA, was serving at an outreach ministry in Baltimore City on Wilkins Avenue. I asked Warren, I was living in Baltimore at the time, and I told him that, you know, I feel like I want to serve. I want to be a part of the ministry. I just want to serve. And I live in Baltimore City. And he said, well, if you're really interested, you should meet my fiance. She serves at this ministry in downtown Baltimore. I said, okay. I contacted Deb, who is his fiance, and I said, hey, my name's Jason. I don't know you, but I'm interested in serving in downtown Baltimore. She said, great, can you come down on a Tuesday? I said, I can't do a Tuesday. She said, well, we're here Thursday too. I said, cool, I'll do a Thursday. So I attended on a Thursday. I went down one Thursday. I was like, I'll do this. This is no problem. It's in the hood, but whatever. Like, it was good. I left, and then I came back the next Thursday, and I hear the door open. It's a row home, so you just look down the hallway from the kitchen. You can see everybody coming in. I looked down the hallway, I heard the door open, and some of the kids were coming in. So they came in, they sat down, they started doing their thing. I heard the door open again, and I looked down the hallway, and it was Emily. And she came in. And I said, I'm done. Thank you, Jesus. Delight yourself in the Lord.
Wow.
And he will give you the desires of your heart.
Wow.
Emily served in children's church or Sunday school in the same classroom that I was in when I first said, maybe God will give me a wife.
Oh, wow.
She just served at a different service.
Wow.
So our first date, that came up.
Nice.
It's like, oh, you go here and you serve in children's ministry. Oh, really? What time? Or what grade? Fifth grade. Well, so do I. What time? Like 10. Wow. Nice. It's like I serve at 8.
No, wow.
So for 3 years, we tracked it. For 3 years, we just kind of did this.
Wow.
Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart.
Dude, that's almost like a movie. Like you can watch the movie, like Jason's cleaning up in the classroom, he leaves, then Emily comes in the other door.
Yeah.
When are these two gonna meet?
Yeah.
And God said, you know what? They're gonna meet at the right time.
That's right, at the right time.
At the right place, which is different than this classroom.
That's right.
But that's really cool that you can track that back and see God at work.
Yeah.
And God doing that. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desire.
Delight yourself in the Lord.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that story, and thank you, Emily, for being a part of that story. And next time Jason comes on, I think we'll hopefully have Jason and Emily here together.
Yes, absolutely.
Because one of the things I'd love to hear is from Emily's perspective, you know, the fact that you've answered God's call into full-time ministry and how that impacts your family and how that impacts the things that you do. Like you said, you have one daughter.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And you have another on the way.
Yes.
Which is awesome as well. So God is blessing you and your family, and I pray that he will continue to do that as you delight yourself in him.
That's right.
That he will continue to expand those desires of your heart. So that's a good one. Thanks for sharing. Like I said, it's one of my favorite verses, and I love hearing how different people have kind of interpreted, applied that verse, and that's cool that it works so in such a special way in your life as well.
Yeah, it was just. I look back on it and I can say I had an intention. I did want to get married. Mm-hmm. God knew that in my heart. Mm-hmm. He will give you the desires of your heart, but not before you delight yourself in him.
Nice.
So delight yourself in him.
Cool.
And that's where.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's the way I was moving.
Thank you. Well, I think that's actually a good place to leave it. I don't know how to top that story. So thank you always for your faithful service. And thank you you were always a good example to me and encouragement to me. And I always tell the story, the first time you met me, I think I had just made the decision to go into seminary. You're like, that's awesome.
Yes.
He's like, we need more men to actually stand up and be men and do what God is calling them to do. So you spoke truth into me and encouraged me from the first time I met you, and you continue to do so by the example you set and the words at that Friday morning Bible study and just in life in general. So thank you for being a blessing and encouragement in my life.
Yes, you're welcome.
And thank you for being here on the bridge.
Thank you.
I always like to close with a song recommendation, and it's hard to top. There's one that I've been thinking about with this call to elder ministry and full-time ministry and other things that I've been doing.
Yeah.
And Karen sang it beautifully on Sunday, but I want to bring it up again. The song is Available by Elevation Worship. Such a good song. If you haven't heard it, Available, Elevation Worship. It says, narrow as the road may seem, I'll follow where your spirit leads. Broken as my life may be, I will give you every peace. Here I am with open hands, counting on your grace again. Less of me and more of you. I just want to see you move. I hear you call, and I am available. And that's really what it comes down to. We as God's children need to be available. When he calls us to go there, be available. Be willing to hear it. Be willing to follow. He's not necessarily going to paint that whole picture out for you so you can see it. And it doesn't mean it will be without adversity. But the best thing to be is available when God calls. Here I am. Send me. Raise my hand. Pick me. Pick me. You want me to pray? What? All right. I'll pray. And that's cool that kid said, you know what? All right. I'll pray. Even though that might not have been what he was expecting when he raised his hand. And that's cool that you prompted him to do so. So cool. Thank you again for being here.
Pleasure.
Thank you all, YouTube, eFam. We're always glad to have you here on the bridge, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Have a good night. God bless.